Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
Uh,
Welcome to 18th. Was supposed to be 19th, but we had some technical difficulties. 18th episode of podcast और podcast प्रभुकास्ट. आज हमारे साथ हमारे डीबीएफ के एक और पास्टर हैं, पास्टर इमैनुअल इम्ती. ही इज उनको प्यार से हम पास्टर नोएल बुलाते हैं. और पास्टर नोएल डीबीएफ में हैं एंड ही इज serving the youth there. Incidentally, पास्टर नोएल और मैं सेम कॉलेज से पढ़े हुए हैं. एंड मतलब आई थिंक अभी 2020 में मिला मैं पास्टर नोएल को ऑनलाइन, जब मैं इंटर्न कर रहा था डीबीएफ के साथ. एंड सो बट इट हैज बीन वेरी गुड टू नो पास्टर नोएल. एंड जस्ट फ्रॉम जो इन पर्सन हमारी कुछ कॉन्वर्सेशंस हुई हैं, उन्हीं को हम आगे मतलब वी वांटेड टू शेयर विद everyone and learn from Pastor Noel. So I gave a little bit of intro आपके बारे में, Pastor Noel, but I just maybe ask you also to introduce yourself.
oh, so good. Hello, everyone. Good to be here.
Right.
Good job you guys are doing. Keep it up. I work with DBF for the past about 2 years now, and I take care of the youth, the music, and several other responsibilities. And it's I've been working with young people for about 25 years, officially and unofficially, in many various capacities. I have served about 7 churches. I grew up in DBF though, and my Sunday school and youth ministry, all that. And it's been a wonderful experience being mentored by many pastors and leaders of all kinds.
Mm.
And I worked in DU also, DU area with the university students for quite some time. I also ran a hostel ministry for about 8 years, and so it's been very interesting working with. And I was also a teacher for about 12 years in a school
Mm.
simultaneously with all these ministries. And so yeah, I've worked with young kids all the way to university postgraduates, young working adults. So it's been a very interesting season, and I don't know how it happened. It wasn't really my plan, it's God's plan. I never wanted to be a pastor, but somehow I ended up being one. It's very weird what God has in store for you.
Mm.
But yeah, I was doing other stuff alongside with all these things that I was doing. So yeah, it's been great. I'm married, 2 children. Yeah, and, baby's running around, so don't mind if he screams
Mm.
once in a while here and there. Yeah, so
Mm.
great to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being here. पास्टर नोएल, सबसे पहले आपसे क्वेश्चन मैं यही पूछूंगा. जैसे अभी यू मेंशन्ड यू आर मैरिड. अभी मतलब हमारा पॉडकास्ट इज रिलेटिवली यंग. हमने मतलब थोड़े बहुत ही एपिसोड्स करे हैं, बट वी हैव स्पोकन अबाउट क्रिश्चियन मैरिज अ लिटिल बिट. हमने मतलब मसीह जीवन में मतलब व्हाट इज गॉड्स प्लान फॉर मैरिज, उस पर थोड़ा बहुत हमने बात करी है. माय क्वेश्चन टू यू एज ए पास्टर इज, just briefly, if you could give us a brief understanding of what Christian marriage should look like, but more focus on the second part of question, and what is the state of young people in the church that you see, and what is their understanding of Christian marriage. Generally speaking, what do you see in the landscape in church में आपको जो मसीह शादी का माहौल है वो कैसा मतलब जान पड़ता है.
Oh, okay. It's a very interesting and very big question. A lot of issues with that. But let me just take it simply. In the Bible, when I look at it, as far as I can, understand, there's basically family ministry. You don't find Sunday school ministry, kids ministry, youth ministry, children, women's ministry, young adults ministry. There's no such thing. Historically speaking, also because by the age of 12 and 13, a person was declared as an adult historically in many cultures all over the world. you know. So which means by that age of 12 or 13, they were basically ready for marriage, you know. So historically, if I may go, on a, when you're born, a boy or a child usually stays, a girl also stays with the parents till the age of about 6 and 7, approximately in the home. Then, when they reach about 6, 7, the boys they usually go to their fathers, you know, the uncles, and they learn the trade. So that's the trade school. So they spend time with adults. You know, they don't spend time with other kids per se. So they literally spend working, you know, being a soldier or a farmer or a blacksmith or a carpenter or whatever. They start learning the trade from there. Simultaneously, the girls are learning about you know, the household, about not only cooking, cleaning, washing, but also making medicines, maybe, or you know, weaving, or you know, the craft of managing a house. So by the time they're 12 or 13, they're basically ready to contribute to society, right? And biblically, I mean, if you think about, even scholars say that Mother Mary was about 15 years old when she got married, possibly younger also, but approximately that age. And so this modern post-industrial concept of waiting for marriage till in your mid 20s or 30s or even 40s has its you know, baggages, which delays human beings, you know, the all the urges that you have, all the health that you have, all the strength that you have, and all this what do you call, this development phase that you have, it's kind of stunted to some extent, you know. And there's a lot of non-biblical or secular, if you want to call it, or even pagan practices and philosophies that influence the way that even that not everybody, but even Christians look at the world and marriage and things like that. Of course, in the modern context, there are pros and cons to all these things, and we need to also go with the time, so to speak, because yeah. So when you, so that's basically the background behind how society was and is, and you know, human nature is. But then when you come to the Christian understanding, you know, okay, let's not look at the age factor per se. We know science, sociology says that the woman's most fertile period is between the age of 19 to about 25 or so. After 35, it's terrible. You know, it's very difficult. So at the most, if you want to have kids, not later than 30, 35. After that, it's going to be quite tough. For men, of course, their fertility continues for a certain period of time. Uh, and coming to women again, I think you have only 500 eggs, you know, and so you're going to run out of eggs, healthy eggs, after a certain period of time. So looking at all those biological factors as well. But then, so biblically coming to what marriage is, the man is the priest of the house. He's the prophet of the house. He's the caretaker. He's the watchman of the house. And of course, the woman, she is with him all along the way, right? So in a healthy biblical household, you have your husband who takes care, who goes into the field, and you know, does the hunting, the job, the you know, the farming and all that stuff, and then he brings the produce back to the house, and then together with the wife and with the kids, they process the produce, however we understand it, and economically, that's the basic idea. And taking care of a house is, it's very expensive, very time consuming, and even if a wife may not be financially, you know, stable, but because, like, I remember this research which says that uh, if the two house both if both couples are working, then actually you're managing two households, you know. So the expenses actually increase. So you may think that you are making more money, but when you do your economics behind it, the statistics behind it, you know, you're actually hiring more people, you're spending more time in transport, energy, you know, all these things. So you're actually spending more money than you're actually earning. So when the wife is in the home and helping, yes, of course, nothing is stopping her from doing economics, some doing own businesses and side business and things like that. And if she's able to balance it very well, then that's wonderful, that's amazing, that's a blessing from God as well. You know, the uh, Proverbs 31 woman, you know, who has a expansive industry running around in managing in her own house. So if she reaches that level, which of course I am assuming after she's weaned her children, right? So weaning period takes about 3 to 4 years. After that period, nothing is stopping her from, you know, contributing to the well-being of the whole household. in every sense of the word. So if you have that balance and that understanding in a house, that the parents together are spiritually mentoring, counseling, teaching, training the kids, plus together simultaneously are providing and taking care of the economics or the management of the house, and together are being a model for the community, for the Christian church, and for the larger community outside, of how a loving, caring, well balanced home is. I mean that's the basic core of it. Yeah. So that's it in short.
Yeah, thank you for sharing like brief, very broad overview of what Christian marriage is like, ought to be like. But like in today's context, generally lands across landscape. I know you touched on this a little bit, uh, but what do you see uh, is the general attitude of young people towards marriage? Uh, I know you mentioned they're delaying marriage, contrary. I guess maybe you could talk a little bit about why you think that is.
So one thing is there's a lot of social pressure,
Hmm.
and of course you have your world economics that make it harder for you
Hmm.
to make money, and for your money to have worth. For example, our grandparents, I mean, they could literally buy land and a house
Yeah.
by the mid 20s and 30s. You know, I mean, you think about inheritance. Okay, fine. There one category of grandparents who inherited land from the forefathers,
Hmm.
but then there was another group who could earn it. They could make the money. Money was worth a lot, and there was stability in society, and all these things were there. Our parents had a difficulty, maybe by the mid 30s or 40s only.
Hmm.
Someone till only in the 50s and 60s they could actually buy land, especially in the cities. We talk about the cities. But for us, in our generation and younger than us, my goodness, unless they are very well established, uh, uh, you know, um, professionally,
Hmm.
it's going to be very difficult for them to find that space where they will be comfortable in not owning a house or a land. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because there is a pressure
Hmm.
saying that they need to have a house or they need to have so much income before they can think about establishing themselves and getting married.
Yeah.
And sadly, also, there's one school of thought which says that unless the man is 100% financially stable, he cannot get married,
Hmm.
which is also one thing to say.
Hmm.
That is why it's okay for now, the modern era, if the wife also, both of them, at least till they have kids, you know, they're able to sit together, establish a business together, work together, and
Hmm.
find that balance later once they have children. Because once you have children, like I said, the economic balance will be a mess because you'll have to end up hiring people, maids and play school and all these extra things are going to be added up. So unless you reach a certain income bracket, it's going to be hard. So that's one. So those are some of the reasons why young people are delaying marriage. But also, one thing I've noticed is they are scared of marriage. You know, they've had a lot of bad examples, sadly, or not enough encouragement, or not enough coaching, mentoring, teaching to say that marriage is and can be a beautiful thing if we work on it in a proper way. No,
Hmm.
so those are some reasons, in short, why young people are having
Yeah.
finding it tough to get married. Wouldn't you agree? What do you say?
Yeah.
You know?
That's right. Desmond, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I had exactly the same question. Thanks, Sam, for asking it. Just to add on that question, I mean, today it's very common. People before marriage, young people are practicing and calling it dating. So
Yes.
just wanted you to add on it. What's your take on this? Is it
So
good,
historically
bad?
speaking, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go to the word dating or the whole culture of dating. So as I
Hmm.
mentioned before,
Mhm.
historically, in most cultures of the world, even in the West, talk about England or Germany or Russia or wherever it is, uh, you know, since the girls are usually at home with their parents, and the boys are usually with their dads all the time, with their
Hmm.
uncles, big brothers, be it in the industrial setting or in the even the let me call it traditional setting, the pagan setting, as in the farms and all that stuff. heathen. There's different meaning to that, but yeah, that's where the ancient traditions are. Uh, the parents took care of everything. Yeah. So when the time came for them to get married, they were betrothed. There was negotiation. There was discussion from the family side, and there was no time for fooling around, so to speak. In most cultures, of course, in some cultures, I won't go to certain cultures where it was after a certain age, like 12 or 13, the women were let loose, the men were let loose. They had whole series of sexual relationships even before they decided whom to settle down with. So that's a whole. There's so many spectrums, so many different kinds
Are
of
you
cultures
talking about
anthropologically.
modern day America?
No, see, that's what I'm saying. So modern day American is also, yeah. So, yeah. So I mean, studying anthropology and sociology is amazing. Where we got so many different kinds of cultures. Even from my Naga culture now, every tribe has its own kind of understanding on marriage and sexuality and all these things. You know. So anyway, coming to the Western Judeo-Christian, European influence over the West, coming all the way to the modern world today in context of dating. Okay, so what happened was so that was how it was, right? The family takes care of marriage, and there's no time for fooling around. And by the age of 13 or 14, 15, 16, something, you got married, start having kids. And usually by the age of 30 or 35, maybe you die, literally, during childbirth or some sickness or plague or chicken pox or smallpox or whatever. So life expectancy in many regions was quite low. That's why you got married early also. Even if I remember, Queen Catherine the Great of Russia, I think she had 20 kids or something like that. So no queen was spared also. All of them had a lot of babies. And many of them have many conditions. Queen Catherine had a very bad condition also post after giving birth to children. And that's a different story. Okay. So what happened was the Industrial Revolution came about. And then we had the First World War and then the Second World War. So, and then the introduction of the automobile, the car, especially in the US. So, and then you had the invention or the development of the pill, the women's pill in the 1960s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are a lot of factors, So, example, when during the war, a lot of men died. A lot of men came back damaged. A lot of homes are broken. So men started losing, their influence over the home and the children and the women and of the daughters. So when psychologically broken men come home, they're not fit for anything. Kind of, it takes them years to develop. Then along with that, thanks to the world wars, women were finally released from their homes and went to work in the factories. Started, building ships and tanks and aircrafts and all these things. So, and of course, when the war swept to Europe itself, there was a lot of broken homes in every sense of the word. So that let loose the women, so to speak. That loosened the fabric of domestic traditional culture structures. And then when in in 1945 and after, the U.S. government decided to make its economy a consumer economy. So thus the car was introduced in a big way. And when you think about architecture, have you heard of the parlor? The points about it, right? So the parlor was a room that usually many middle class and upper class homes used to have, where it was a special room, literally in the architecture, that was designed for girls, the daughters, to host suitors. Yeah. So the parents or somebody will approach the parents, I mean, the other set of parents, and then say, "We have a young man, we're interested in your daughter. Can you meet?" And they say, "Okay, come to our parlor." And then there'll be an aunt or or a mother or somebody, or a big sister. They'll be sitting together. Two, three of them will be sitting in this parlor, having tea and cakes. And the young man will come and, he'll spend some time with them, chit-chatting, reading poetry, playing the piano, and so on and so forth. And that's how we used to get to know each other. But then what happened with the car was, once the cars became affordable, they will go for dates. That's where the word, actually speaking, even if you take it one step back, the word date come from prostitutes, you know. So prostitutes would have a date with a client. They literally set a date with a client. So that's where the word historically came from. Okay. But then it kind of became loosely shifted over. And then once these young men had the mobility, and the women also had this freedom, so to speak, especially in US. It starts with US because that's where the Model T and post all that stuff happened. And it's very interesting. These American fighter pilots, when they returned from the war, they had learned to boost their engines. A lot of engineers were trained, mechanics were trained. So nitrous oxide, for example, we see it in these movies these days. It was literally used in jet planes. Not jet planes, sorry, in those fighter planes. So when they came back, the whole roadster culture started. The biking gangs and all these things started from that culture, and that's how it's very interesting, man. It's so many things put together, and then that's how the culture of dating developed, in short. And so women were let loose, and then in the 60s, the sexual revolution came. So there was no more fear of pregnancy and such, and so women became even more freer, more loose. Then along with that, we have movies, a lot of movies. So Hollywood movies were a big thing, and then it spread all over. So the culture of kissing on screen, boyfriend girl, many of the movies or themes are that. It's not about war or history or all that. Not And of course, classical books were written on such topics of marriage, Pride and Prejudice and all that stuff came about. But then movies, literally, you saw these things, happening. And so then you move on, and then 60s happened, 70s happened. Society, especially the West, was disillusioned with established culture. So then you had the whole hippie movement coming along, free love. And then these hippies, they came to Goa and all over, Kulu Manali.
Yeah.
And then Hollywood started copying Hollywood. Then television came, and now internet, this past 20 years, has been a massive boom. It literally shocked me. I got a culture shock. I went for Bible college for 2-3 years. When I came back, I got a shock. In just 2-3 years, the world changed. The cell phone came, hand devices, bang, man. Now you don't even have to go and date someone. You can just do it on the phone. You know what I mean? So they are dating in and of itself it's how you look at it. If you want to meet with someone and spend some time and chit chat and do a hobby together, or go and work, do something together, it's fine. But what does it lead to? What is the goal and purpose of it? If it's selfishness, you want something out of that person, especially sexual or emotional massage, or you're using a person to seem to be cool, and hot, and you're looking for public appreciation and all that stuff, of course it's gone off track. So in the modern Christian context, especially for a healthy, young, mature Christian man or woman, you do need to date. I mean, I am at peace playing my drums, or studying the Bible, or going to the slum, or hanging out with a bunch of Christians youth. Do I need a special personal someone? I don't know. After a certain age, I maybe I should start seriously looking. But why fool around, nah? After you graduate from college, you got a basic job, then start seriously, pray and start preparing and looking for that somebody. Why fool around for another 4-5 years saying that, oh, might as well practice, might as well train, do trials. So the picture I was given, it was given to me long ago, was like a bouquet of flowers, right? When you have your birthday or something special or a cake, do you want a secondhand cake that's been licked and touched and poked and prodded and say happy birthday? No, we hate that. It's disgusting, right? Or a cake, a flower that's been passed around to 15 people and finally reaches you where it's all wilted, dead, dried, broken. No, our virginity, so to speak, our emotional, spiritual, physical virginity is so precious. But people, and it's best when it reaches you fresh and final, complete. But then, because of the influence of the world and the weakness of the church, even to answer these questions or address these questions, because like I said, right, suddenly there's a massive generation gap in these past 30 or 40 years. There was always a generational gap between the pastors and the young people, but then suddenly it's rushed so fast in this past few decades that some of the many ministers are not able to bridge that gap, and they're not able to reach. For example, one term is let's Netflix and stuff, right? What's the term?
Netflix and chill.
Netflix and chill. Yeah. I mean, who would have thought that, which Netflix came about, what, 3 years ago, maybe 4? Yeah. I don't know how old Netflix is. Pretty young. And you know what that means, right? No, I just found out recently.
Okay.
It doesn't mean a 90s kid, okay, Netflix, okay, oh, I know, okay, oh, what, let's chill. Chilling means hanging out. But then now the modern kids, Netflix and chill means what? To have sex, literally,
Hmm.
you know, to meet in your house and, romp around, as you say. It's very old language. So times are moving fast.
Hmm.
So the church, the elders, the leaders, the
Hmm.
caretakers, and the pastor in the home, the parents in the home have to be aware of how fast society is moving, and
Right.
get on with the game.
Right.
Yeah. So
So speaking of like a lot of interrelated issues, but coming back to like why marriage is kind of being delayed, and one thing, like I've heard this popular quote, it shows up again and again on the internet. It says, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times.
yeah,
And in my understanding, uh, the World War and even our country's independence created a lot of hard time. That was kind
yeah,
of my grandparents' generation, maybe your
yeah,
parents and grandparents, generation. Those were hard times, and like out of that, I think uh,
yes,
people really created, like it created
true,
strong men. It created men who wanted to take care of their families, and it
yes,
relatively, I would say, has produced good times. In our
yes, definitely,
uh, generally speaking, things have been really good. Like just talking about Indian church, and especially like in Northeast, perhaps, which I know you've been in Delhi, but you're originally from Nagaland. I would suspect that a lot of prosperity Northeast has experienced, as is the case with the rest of India, over the past 70 years. And I think one of the things why um, you know we are languishing is because we good times have created weak men, uh, men who are men who have a failure of, like you said, they're afraid of marriage, they're also afraid of working hard, they're afraid of uh, you know doing hard things in life. They're afraid of um, working hard, they're afraid, they're just straight up lazy sometimes. But more than many things, I would say, they don't have a vision. This is something we have talked about on the podcast before. Like Bania community in North India, especially, like they are trading class people. They will, like, they're small
banyas,
little, yeah, caste or class,
yes, yes,
caste or yeah, same thing in
completely,
India. Um, like a small little boy in Kiryani ki dukan, he has been
yes,
seeing his father, he's been seeing his grandfather, he's been
yeah,
seeing his great grandfather do the same business, and he knows what his future is. And in my observation, like Christian church, we don't have a vision. In many ways, I think culturally we feel orphans. We don't know where we belong as a story, and I think that causes young men to not have direction. And as a result, they may not work hard, or if they work hard, they don't work hard as Christians. They become like worldly, and they may not pursue marriage. Those who work hard work really hard and then become worldly, don't serve church, don't get married, things like that. Any comments on that, young men? Does that Do you agree? Do you?
yeah. So yeah, it's a classic condition that the first generation struggles the most, and the second generation has seen it and has been through it because they were kids when their parents were struggling through it, so they also do very well in life. Third generation could possibly do well if the stories, the inspiration, the testimonies have been passed down and they're aware of everything that's happened and they've tasted it. But the fourth generation, usually historically, they're the ones who have enjoyed only the fruits. Sometimes the third, sometimes the fourth. So by the fourth, like they say, right? Your grandfather rode a camel. Your father rides a Mercedes. Your grandchildren ride a camel again. That story is there. So it's about, see, okay, if you look at Jewish history,
mm,
let's take the Jewish people, right? Number one is, where are the Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Assyrians? You know, they've all ceased to exist. They've disappeared technically. Their cultures, they genetically may be around, but the culture has disappeared.
mm,
The thread is gone. You know, all of them have disappeared, but almost all of them. But then when you look at the Jews, the Hebrews, they're still around.
mm,
You know, one reason why is because they tell stories. They have the written script. They have the culture. They give the education, the training to the kids.
mm,
They treasure knowledge and they share the knowledge. You see, so for generations and generations, the Jews have continued a chain, an almost unbroken chain of progress and development. And you look, I mean, the US, so to speak, as they say,
mm,
is controlled by the Jews. And because of that, the UN is controlled by the Jews. You know, I'm
mm,
just saying, uh, I don't mean to go into any kind of, you know, conspiracy theory, but it's evident, because why? Because of their culture. You
mm,
look at media, you look at technology, you look at your GPS system today is
mm,
invented by the Israelis, Israelis, yeah. Your mouthwash, even mouthwash, your Listerine, so many things we don't know, we don't even realize that, but the Jews have had a hand in how it's developed, you know. So the secret is, like I mentioned, they have a very close connection with their children,
mm,
which many cultures from which we come from don't have that.
mm,
It's maybe the Banyas have that, where
mm,
they're training literally from the age of 4 and 5. They sit in the shop with their parents. They go for school. They come back from school and they made us sit in the shop. So they
mm,
learn the trade. I've seen, we have seen in many such
yeah.
places. So, but when you talk about the Christian community, it's such a vast,
Mm,
varied, mixed community. So we can actually brand them like a cultural group.
mm,
So, I mean, that's also the beauty of the church, right? We have come from all kinds of backgrounds, from all kinds of races and histories.
mhm,
So,
mm,
what we need to do is basically, as I mentioned in the beginning, there's no kids ministry, there's no Sunday school ministry. It's family ministry.
mm,
So the pastors, and mentors, the Bible college teachers need to mentor in such a way that the fathers, the parents, the mothers are strong to take care of their own homes and be their own pastor in their own house,
mm,
and not relegate Sunday school, youth group, and parents don't have any say in the lives of the spiritual say in the lives of the kids.
mm,
That's
We
that's
already
wrong.
did that for you.
Yeah, yeah.
mm,
So you see, so when we talk about now the Northeast,
mm,
Northeast is a very interesting place. Uh, let's start north. Arunachal. Arunachal is still majority either Buddhist or animists. Okay,
mm,
some Christian work has begun for some couple of years now, but then lots of Hindus have gone there also. You have your Sri Ram school, right? So they have been starting a lot of centers, and thanks to the Indian Army's presence over there, they're very fluent in Hindi. I'm shocked. I was shocked when I first found out. Compared to the rest of Northeast, Arunachal is very fluent in Hindi because
wow.
of all these military presence and these Indian government presence and all that stuff over there.
Mm,
But of course, many regions are still untouched,
mm,
and the reason they have progressed and prospered is because the Indian government has a stake in that place, an economic, political, pride stake in that place. So they've pumped in a lot of money, and they've taken extra care, and that's why you don't actually hear of any insurgency groups over there because they don't want freedom. They've already been at war with China, so they know who the enemy is. It's not the Indian government. It's
mm,
not. It's the Chinese. So they are Indian. They're more Indian than the rest of Northeast Indian. If I think about it like that, no. So that is a different set of stories, and yeah, that's one way. Then
mm,
you have Assam. I think the history of Assam.
mm,
They were never really conquered by the Mughals or any other people. 14 times they defeated the Mughals. They were quite a strong independent nation, and they, of course, they have the connections with Thailand and Burma. So kind of genetic and cultural, and Assam and Bengal. They have that kind of network over there, that kind of racial mix over there. Truly, they are the gardens of the Northeast. But then they are, yes, of course, still a lot of Muslims, a lot of Hindus, a lot of pagans also are still there, as in, traditional animist belief systems are there. Some Christian influence, but because of them being the economic center for the whole Northeast region, they have petroleum over there. Imagine petroleum, the first place in India where they found petroleum, and tea gardens. Historically, interestingly, when the British came and they wanted to start the tea gardens, they started in the Naga Hills. But then, we came and chopped a lot of heads. So they moved all the operations down to Assam.
mm,
Literally.
mm,
So because of such things, Assam has prospered, whereas the other regions have not prospered because they have been relatively peaceful. You know.
mm,
So progress. Of course, Ulfa is there, and certain other groups fighting for own freedom. Then you have let's go to Meghalaya, which is the Shillong was the capital of United Assam, which is everybody excluding NEFA, Northeast Frontier Agency, which is Arunachal Pradesh,
mm,
and certain other places here and there.
mm,
So they had a lot of since the 1840s, I believe, was when it came under. Correct me if I'm wrong, but 1840s was when they Meghalaya was started to get influenced by the British. Yeah. So they have been doing pretty well, but you have your Kasi, Garo, and Jaintia groups over there. And the Catholic Church and the Anglicans have had some inroads, but they also still follow their pagan, you know, animist roots. And some freedom movements is happening there, been many decades now.
mm,
But thanks to the education, there was a center of education for the whole Northeast region, St. Edmund's College, for example, and school.
mm,
So all the elite of the Northeast, besides Jorhat and Guwahati and Shillong, these are the kind of the three prime spots, and many few others. Otherwise, you have to go to Calcutta. So the first generation of Christian, or rather, the the leaders were from that were educated in that place. You know, so it has a lot of impact for generations still today. And then Tripura was its own kingdom. Imphal was its own kingdom.
mm.
Hindu kingdoms. It's very complicated, right?
Yeah.
And then you have Mizoram, which is also was fighting for freedom, independence, which was caused because of famine. I hope you know that.
Mm,
So there's a famine over there, and then they felt that the Indian government didn't take care of them. So because of that, they started fighting, and they literally won. They conquered the not con- they occupied the capital, Aizawl, till the Indian army, Indian Air Force bombed the city, and then they fought, and then they were not defeated, but they surrendered. But thankfully now, Mizoram is at peace,
mm,
and because of that, they have quite well. Actually, they prospered quite a bit. Yeah.
mm,
So peace does bring prosperity.
mm,
Not talking about corruption. That's another issue.
mm,
And Manipur has its own set of problems with so many people groups over there. You have your Mizo kind, the Mizo people group, and then the Naga groups, and then the Imphal Valley groups. So each one of them is struggling with his own problems, and that's why they have like 30 or 40 insurgency groups. Some of them are just gangs, basically,
mm,
because of economic
mm,
problems. And then Nagaland, I think you know the story. Historically, most of these regions actually were independent people groups. The British didn't conquer them actually, so to
mm,
speak. Forget the Mughals, forget the Mauryas. They had nothing to do with them. This region is completely independent. But then it's in a way because of the Christian missionaries that the region started to open up, and then the British came in, to protect these missionaries and expand the reach. And then plus the Nagas, for example, invited certain of us invited the British over. All these things are there, so it's quite complicated. So it does seem to prosper in some way, but then it is a very sensitive place.
mm,
The politics, the culture, the society, the faith issues are it's a big topic in itself. So
mm.
maybe one day we can pick that up. But since we're coming to what is the first question?
What was the first
What-
question?
well, how did I come to this point?
Oh, no, no. I was I was asking you about um, just weak men and
Yes. So I'll come to this. Okay, I'm very specific to Nagaland. Okay.
yeah.
How do men become weak? So pre-Christian, 1880s. Okay, 1880s we were one set of people. Then 1890s the missionaries came. In fact, this year we're celebrating 150 years. This month, in fact, this past month, 150 years of Christianity in Nagaland. And that first batch of Christians really made a big difference. That they were really strong men. You know, they went to other tribes without their swords and spears. The risk of them, their heads being chopped off. They took the faith. And these, I'm not talking about American missionaries or Assamese missionaries. These are Naga missionaries. Those who came to faith, they themselves, within a few years of training, they went to other tribes and other areas and regions and started preaching the gospel. Because of the gospel, there was peace now. There was development, there was education, there was health, a lot of things they developed. Then my grandfather's generation, my great grandfathers, they went to war, First World War. They went to France. They realized that all white men are just as demonic and beastly as any other men. And then they came back and said if they can do this to each other, I mean. So anyway, they came back with this Naga identity and said we are all of us are one people group. There's so many different cultures in the world. We're one people group. Then they work so hard, they develop industry or at least some commerce. Then they send their children, my grandfathers, to places like Johar and Shillong and Calcutta or whatever to get education. They came back as the first doctors, engineers, civil servants, bureaucrats, so on and so forth. Then they started establishing the nation, the modern institutions. And it was a hard pioneering work. Specifically, one of my grandfather, let me talk about two. I mean, all four of my great grandfathers are very interesting, but let's come to my grandfathers, two of them. One was the first, uh, he was the founder of the Naga National Movement, like the first president. So, NNC, Naga National Council, which was the political entity and of the Naga people. And he actually met Nehru when he was in college. When Nehru came to Shillong, he was in Edmonds. And they started talking about Indian Naga independence. So the whole discussion happened over there. Then, for whatever reason, he joined the Indian Frontier Service and served in Arunachal Pradesh. When he went to Arunachal, he literally mapped the border. The pictures of him in the snow line mapping the border of Arunachal and China and all these things, establishing certain cities, towns like Bomdila and certain other places. So, and they used to go by camel, but not camel, pony and ferry and elephant rides and into the jungle, extending the reach of the Indian government. Let me say. Long story short, and then my other grandfather, he decided to be a educationist, like a inspector of schools. So he would go by foot, village to village, all over Northeast, all over Nagaland and Arunachal, and I know several other places, establishing schools, bringing education system. At night by himself, he would go. He'd tell stories of hearing lions and tigers and leopards roaring around him, stalking him as he's traveling with his lantern and things like that. And then, by the way, he used football to start schools. Think about it. You can bring kids to school, so he would start football matches and football teams and have inter-village, inter-school football matches. And that's how he used to, he started schools, many schools all over. These guys were hard. They were, one of my grandfather was kidnapped by the militants. We call them undergrounds because he was a government agent. He was kidnapped. They thought him dead. Horrible stories, but they were hard men. Then our fathers came. Our fathers became established in the government of India with different services.
Yeah.
And then, to be honest, when we come to my cousins, some of them are doing very well. Some of them are like still floating around. They may be financially established, maybe economic, but when you talk about their emotional well-being, their spiritual well-being, their manliness or the establishment in their family life, we have all these kinds of issues. And then I'm seriously worried for my nephews and nieces, and others, because they now live in palatial houses with 5 bedrooms. They have plots of land everywhere. They fly all over the world. So they have not seen the hardness of life. And coming to Nagaland again, because of the whole underground scene. Am I talking too much?
No.
Oh.
Because of the whole independence movement in the 1950s, okay, thousands and thousands for decades joined the underground movement, okay, which is basically the freedom fighters. Because of that, the Indian army came. At one time, for every one Naga, there were 5 Indian soldiers in the whole state, in the whole region. That's that many. And almost, not almost, every village was burned to the ground at least 3 to 10 times. Because the army will come, they'll burn, they'll take all the people, put them into like concentration camps called groupings and stuff like that, put them over there. Yeah. And then they'll come back, they'll rebuild, they'll come burn it again. So all these horrible things used to happen. So because of that, a lot of men died. Okay, a lot of men have died or have been emotionally damaged. Women also, a lot of rapes and molestations, and just terrible torment. So at 50s, 60s, 70s, you think about it, 80s, till the 80s. Then 94, finally, 94, 95, there's finally ceasefire. But by then, in the 70s and 80s, drugs and alcoholism,
Yeah.
the porous border with Burma. So a lot of drugs came in. Then in the 80s, and all alcohol, Nagaland was declared a dry state. So now we have cheap booze like anything. So almost generations of men have died or have been broken, literally broken. So they're not able to, many of them are not able to, and they're not educated. Like they may be able to read and write, but they're not like open-minded, educated. No, so there is a big everybody till recently. I'm talking about the generation till the 80s and 90s. We thought the government was the only job provider. No, and the government, Indian government also didn't allow industries.
Yeah.
For whatever reasons, no major factories or mines or nothing was there. Very very small. So the Indian government was the only source of stability. And when you join a government, it's a dead end job. Majority of guys don't do much anything because there's this guy's unemployment. If you've heard the term,
Yeah.
you just need two. There's just two officers. You just need two guys, but then you find 20 people, doing sitting in that office. So this has created a lot of weak men, a lot of weak, broken, men with low self-esteem,
Yeah.
and also a lot of dead men. There are no men around. So that's why statistically, Nagaland has the highest number of unmarried professional single women, percentage-wise, because the men they were supposed to marry are dead, or they're broken, or they have women can't respect such men. And the women by themselves have gone ahead, they've studied, they've educated themselves, they worked hard, so on and so forth. And that is why you will find a lot of them marrying outsiders. They've literally married across the globe. Our Naga women have gone out and married so many outsiders, which is fine, But our men, I feel so sad. Similarly, it's happening here and there. So that's what, man. In brief, that's
Yeah.
the condition that's prevailing,
Mm.
and the church needs to wake up and do something about it.
Right. And I'm also wondering, speaking of hard times, increasing persecution, it is my prayer that God would awaken our people to, manhood through the increasing persecution.
Yeah,
Really.
that's very interesting. I've been praying for that actually, because I mean, if you study history, you see
Yeah.
that persecution is what flames the fire of faith,
Mm.
and especially in the northeast region, Mizoram, Manipur, Nagaland, or even Meghalaya and all. A lot of Christianity is there, but there's no persecution per se, even the rest of India.
Mm.
And because of that, we're so comfortable with our Christian state, whatever that means, that everybody is so nice, so sweet, so Christian, that we don't even recognize wolves in our midst, chopping us up.
Right.
And so the faith, yes, of course, there's always a remnant. There's always a community that is strong in the faith, and there's always growing. God is always working. But the vast majority are, like you said, don't have the fire in them. So persecution, hopefully, to some extent, will fan the flames, as it's been doing in Punjab and Rajasthan, Himachal, UP, and many other places, and historically also. So, yeah, we need a healthy balance, man.
Right. Desmond?
So yeah, I'm just talking about the same persecution and manhood. I would just like to go from here to question about business. I mean, just like we spoke about marriage just now, that we are delaying it, and yet there's a very practical issue behind it. So I think business could be a solution, a
Entrepreneurship.
good answer
Yeah,
towards that entrepreneurship. Yeah. So how can a church or a Christian business can be established or work
there's
towards? I mean,
several
what kind
things.
of view? Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting because see, uh, there are many kinds of people. For some of them, they're looking for money. Some of them are looking for name, for prestige, and also just to please their parents, isn't it? So they are not satisfied with, or also fear, or lack of knowledge, lack of encouragement, lack of understanding. So this causes people to, like, I joke about JNU, for example, because I have known friends there who have been studying for 10 years or so. They just keep studying. They're 30, 35, but they keep studying. And they're still like babies. You need to think about it. They're not coming out to start earning, working, establishing families. There's a danger in that. I'm saying not everybody, but there is a danger in that, to be in that safe zone, no? To extend your whole, imagine from the age of 4 or so, you're in school environment, school, college, and then you extend it till you're 30 years old. It's a what's the word, comfort zone that many people don't want to come out of. And I think that once I have a PhD, I'll get that job. But sometimes you're too qualified, you're not eligible for anything. Literally, you're too qualified. Nobody wants you. Nobody needs you. You're too specialized. And so you have to end up lying about your CV and saying I'm an MA or a BA or something like that to get a job. And you read the papers in Bihar for sweeper job. There are like 5-10,000 applicants, including PhDs and MAs and MPhils. You know, so like I said, what does all the study have to do unless it's a calling? If you're doing anything out of insecurity or out of fear, is wrong. But if you do anything out of security, sure, God may be calling you to be a scholar, a professor. Do it. But if it's based out of fear that, oh, if I don't have this, I will, I have to work. Then no. So when you talk about occupation and job and calling, you need to know what is your calling. That's the key. What is your purpose in life? If you're walking with the Lord, you have your foundation set in place. You know your strengths, your your gifts, your ability, your talents. God gives you the understanding of knowing your life circumstances, which is built you up for this kind of area of work. The passion that you have in heart. Then you will streamline yourself. That's why the secret is knowing the Lord. When you know the Lord, you will know yourself. Many times people think they'll do everything, then they'll get to know the Lord, then God will lead them. But by then you've wasted years of your life. Okay, so example, you talk about business. So there was a man in New York, it seems, or US. He came to US from Italy, and then he tried all kinds of business to make a living. And then he failed in it. He failed. No matter what they tried, he failed. Then one day he started selling oranges as well. So probably Florida, California or something. And then he started selling oranges, but he wasn't successful. So he got on his knees and he prayed, said, Lord, please help me with my business. I surrender my life to you. Give me a word, give me help. And then he suddenly heard the word juice. He kept hearing the word juice, 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 juice. So he thought about it. And after he looked at all his oranges and saw that people aren't buying oranges, maybe I'll just make juice. So he started making juice, started selling it. Juice.
Or juice.
Juice.
Not Jews.
Not juice. Juice.
Okay.
Juice.
I got you.
Yeah. So he started making juice. Business started to prosper. It started doing well. And now, you know what company that is? Tropicana.
Oh.
Tropicana. And look at him. He made millions of dollars, probably by now billions of dollars. And what expertise did he have? He's just making juice, man, like one of the street corner guys. With a big machine making juice. Other than that, it's a $1 million company. And they are, for a long period of their time, they used to contribute to missions. A lot of profit used to go into missions. Missionaries all over the world. Similarly, one guy was there at the turn of the century or last century. He was a praying man, and then he tried all kinds of businesses. And one day he prayed to the Lord, God, give me a business which the world will use every day. He prayed, he fasted, he searched the Lord. And you know what he invented? Or what's his name? John Colgate. Toothpaste, man. Toothpaste. You used it this morning also,
Mhm.
and now of course it's been sold and rebranded or whatever. But uh, you know, another story is
Mhm.
Two gentle Christian gentlemen, if I'm correct. The story, two of them. In short, Caterpillar. Remember Caterpillar? They make earth movers, bulldozers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and now they expand into shoes and stuff,
Mhm.
excavators, all these things. Now the machines they're making is of such great quality, and they're scattered all over the world,
Mhm.
from buildings to mines to factories to they're constructing, and it's what by Christian gentlemen.
Mhm.
So one of the owners, he was giving away 90% of his profits to missions
Mhm.
because he's making so much money. Even after giving 90% away, it's still enough to take care of a family and home and everything. You know. So the result of his work, the work it does was so good, high quality. Blessing the world. Plus, he himself was being blessed. Plus, with the prophet, he was blessing. So there is no shame in business. There is no embarrassment in not being in the government service or having a title and position, a doctor, sir, reverend, bishop, director general, a secretary.
Mhm.
So many Christians, sadly, for many reasons, they also still run after these things. So what we need to do is, understand that when we sit before the Lord and ask Him for opportunity, for clarity, He will give us suggestions, or not suggestions. He will give us direction. He will reveal to us what our the life story is that moves us towards our space. So anything and everything you do, if it is in holiness and in the direction of the Lord, you will do well in it.
Right.
And that's what we need to know is understand and appreciate as Christians. Yeah.
Yeah.
In brief,
Sorry.
yes. Okay.
One of the pastors I follow, he says that cultures are built by men who have families to feed. And what you were saying earlier about household economics, the before industrialization, kind of households were the engines of wealth. Wealth didn't come from a boss
Yes.
or a CEO or the
Yes.
government even. It came
Yes.
from your backyard. It came from um, you know your your wife's saving, your wife's prudence, and
Yes.
like that's what I think we need to recover in a big way. Like in my opinion, Christian men in India, we need to just find a hardworking woman and get married and do what it takes to uh, you know take care
Yeah.
of her, take care of her children, grow the family in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. um, One more thing that comes to my mind is that someone has said that George Gilder, he's a economist, social critic. He says that if you take the woman's sexual instinct and you submit it to the man, you get a culture of Vikings. You get, like motorcycle bike gang, or you get, really macho kind of blustering kind of culture. But if you take male sexual instinct and make it submit to the female, anchor it around the female, you get civilization. Uh,
Yes. Yes.
you know, so
Yes.
and I think that's what I think we need, uh, is to recognize that the male drive for ambition to do something great is not like a sin. It's not like if you want to be successful, it's wrong. No, you take that and you be successful and have one wife and love her to the death,
Yes.
and that's how you um,
Yeah.
impact
Like
society
exactly.
actually.
I just remember when you mentioned that in Antarctica,
Hmm.
for the first many decades, there were only men allowed, right? You know this. So when the men were there, I
Hmm.
mean the cabins or the places they used to stay were like wild savages. They wouldn't shave They wouldn't bathe. They'll throw junk everywhere.
Yeah.
They'll, all that. They'll go mad. They'll go wild.
Mm.
But then when the first women
Mm.
scientists came to Antarctica, the men started shaving. They started grooming themselves. They started cleaning. They started, maintaining a homely, beautiful environment.
Yeah.
I mean, just one woman out of dozens or hundreds of men in that place. Because of one woman, it had a civilizing effect on
Mm.
the whole scientific community in that place. Imagine, these are scientists, military men, and all these people. It civilized that whole township.
Right.
So it's true. And in Meltic, I mean, and you think about it, same thing. Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
Eve, yeah, I believe so. Eve was brought by God to civilize Adam, bring some structure. And in a way, personally, I used to pray that the woman I would marry would be very good in accounts. That's one of my prayer lists. They should be good in money. She'll know how to account and keep tabs and do all the inventory and all these things. I mean, it's not that I wasn't bad in it, but I needed someone much better than me, you know. And praise the Lord, because of her, my wife, who happened to be in accounts department and a treasurer in the various church organization and so on and so forth. She came with this vast knowledge and experience, and money is in the tips of her fingers. How to calculate and estimate and pay bills and everything. So yes, definitely you need that. And like, without financial order, there's no order,
Mm.
isn't it? You
Yeah.
know. So if you have a woman who has a financial order, a gift, a blessing from the Lord in finances,
Mm.
then your earnings, your spendings, your management, your maintenance, everything will be in order in your life.
Yeah.
And we worship a God of order, the Lord of cosmos, not the word of chaos. So
Mm.
from his heart, cosmos comes. And the beauty, the basic beauty and order in the home sets
Mm.
precedence for beauty and order and civilization in the society. That's very true.
Mm.
And women are like literally like the software, and the men are the hardware. Nah? Without the software, it's chaos. Even when we talk about computer language. The software is what brings it together. Men are the hardware, the buttons, and then the screen, the fan, the all that. Women are the software. Yes, so we have to work. We can't survive without working together.
Yeah.
And yes, let me put it together that God is the one who programs, designs, and brings it together, but in cooperation with us, so to speak.
Mm.
God is such a gentleman. He will not force ram it into us, even if it's good for us. He wants us to want. So God, in His gentleness and patience and kindness, loving kindness, waits for us, and He nudges us. He coaxes us,
Mm.
and through the Holy Spirit, and sometimes and many times through the people, the community, the church, the pastors, the mentors, your friends, and helps us to mold into that space, into that place. But then, sadly, if you're not in the right place, if you don't have the right mentors, the right books, if you're not spending time in prayer before the Lord, fasting and praying and seeking and meditating,
Mm.
you know, will be passed over. Will be passed over.
Yeah.
And it has sadly happened to many people. They've been passed over. And our job, our responsibility is to make sure that people hear and are
Mm.
mentored as much as possible.
Mm.
Yeah. So thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Desmond, any last question, comment, anything?
Nothing, no other questions. I just want to thank
Mm.
Master Imti
Mm.
for such a great time and so much knowledge. Uh, if possible, we'll have you once again
Mm.
Sure.
uh, to know more about the specific culture of Northeast. So that was really interesting, but because of time, we won't be able to go
Oh no.
further in this. Uh, yeah,
Mm.
love to know more about that.
Yeah, that is so true. Thank you, Pastor Noel, for taking your time. Uh, Personally, like it's very encouraging for me to hear these things from you. Just over past 2 years, not many people today are pro marriage or yeah, so explicitly. I must say that, and but I really believe part of God's great commission is marriage and the kind of productivity that it brings for God's kingdom.
Yes.
So thank you for
Yeah, like
yeah,
no,
sorry.
like you just mentioned. See, the Bible begins with a marriage, right? Adam and Eve.
Mhm.
And Jesus, when his first miracle is in a wedding, turning water into wine, he blesses the marriage.
Mhm.
And then, of course, the Bible ends with a great
So,
marriage feast of the
Marriage.
Lamb. And many times you've heard uh, the marriage
mm,
is a sign, is a like of the Trinity. No,
yes.
so yes, marriage is the secret of the Christian life, or the life. Our life is the key to life
Mm,
in one way. So
yeah.
yes, thank you so much for picking this wonderful topic. And yeah, and there are a lot of topics we've touched upon. Maybe you can do them separately. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
indeed.
Thank you so much for this
Thanks.
time.
Thanks again, and hope to see you soon. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
थैंक यू एवरीवन फॉर अगर आप 18th एपिसोड के एंड तक आ गए हैं. मोस्टली आज इंग्लिश में रहा है, बट होपफुली आपको एनकरेज किया होगा ये पॉडकास्ट. और ज़रूर लाइक करिएगा, शेयर करिएगा अपने दोस्तों के साथ. सच में ये टॉपिक हमारे दिल के बहुत पास है, एंड हम चाहते हैं कि लोग आपका हमारी चर्च कम्युनिटी खास करके इसको मतलब समझे और इस पे अमल करें, और अपने लोकल चर्च से जुड़े रहें अगर जो भी कोई सुन रहा है. एंड वी विल सी यू नेक्स्ट वीक. थैंक यू.
Thank you.